After 3 years without a single raise, I started looking for a new job. 2 weeks later, my boss fired me because I dared to hope for more. But what she didn't know is that I had already built the trap she'd fall into. You know that gut punch feeling when you realize someone never truly valued you? That cold silence in the room when you've just been betrayed, and no one even looks surprised? That was me, sitting across from Cassandra Lorne, my boss, my mentor, the woman I used to admire. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the moment she said the words, "We're letting you go," all I could think was, "You're going to regret this." Because this wasn't just about a job. This was about every skipped raise, every backhanded compliment, every time I worked late while she took credit. She thought I'd go quietly. She had no idea what I had planned. My name is Aloan Ray. I'm 29, and until 3 weeks ago, I was an administrative operations manager at Braxwell and Company, a mid-sized firm that branded itself as people first. They loved buzzwords like resilient leadership and employee empowerment. Except, none of those buzzwords ever made it into my paychecks. For 3 years, I gave that company everything. I came in early, stayed late, covered for others. I even worked weekends when the server migration fell behind. No one asked me to. They just expected it. Especially Cassandra Lorne, my direct supervisor and the head of our division. It's funny how people think a smile can erase exploitation. Cassandra was a master of that. Tall, commanding, always in heels that echoed down the hallway like a metronome of authority. She praised me often, publicly. Told the board I was indispensable. Used words like reliable, essential, and my personal favorite, someone who gets things done without needing to be told. But behind closed doors, anytime I asked for a raise or even hinted at a promotion, her tone would change. Timing's not ideal, Aloan. Let's circle back after the next quarter. You're on our radar, just stay consistent. Consistent. That word haunted me. Like the only thing I was allowed to be was predictable. When I joined Braxwell, it was chaos. COVID had gutted their operations team, and turnover was insane. I walked into a half-abandoned floor, files stacked on desks, emails flooding the inbox like a broken dam. I was 26 and desperate to prove myself. And I did. In 6 months, I rebuilt their project tracking systems. I streamlined vendor contracts. I even uncovered a silent budgeting error that saved them $180,000 in misallocated department spending. They didn't give me a bonus for that. Cassandra gave me a tote bag with the company logo and a thank you card signed with her initials. That card is still in my drawer. I never threw it away. Not because I treasure it, but because it reminds me who I was. At night, I drive home to the tiny 2-bedroom apartment I shared with my younger brother, Remy. He was in his second year of pre-law and had just started night classes. I covered most of our rent, groceries, and his books. Our parents passed when we were teenagers, car accident. No extended family stepped up, so I learned early how to stretch a paycheck like elastic. Remy always offered to get a job, but I told him to focus on school. "You'll pay it forward someday," I'd say, even when I wasn't sure if we'd make rent that month. I used to believe hard work paid off, that being the loyal one meant something, that if I kept my head down, stayed gracious, and didn't complain, the universe, or at least the quarterly board, would notice. But the only thing they noticed was how quietly I could endure. I remember the day it changed. I was standing in the break room, microwaving a leftover quinoa bowl I didn't even want. Cassandra walked in wearing a powder blue suit and that perfect smirk she wore when she wanted something. "Aloan," she said, grabbing a lemon Perrier from the fridge. "The board loved your Q2 budget forecast. Flawless work." I smiled, cautious. "Thanks." I was hoping that might open a conversation about a raise, she interrupted, casual as if we'd rehearsed this. I nodded. "I've taken on about 40% more workload since Jana left." That wasn't technically part of my job description. She didn't argue. That was Cassandra's style. She made you feel heard just long enough to dismiss you gently. "I completely agree," she said, cracking the bottle cap. But with the pending acquisition talks, we're in a sensitive phase. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll reevaluate by Q4. Just stay consistent. There it was again. Consistent. It hit my chest like a sack of dry cement. Of course, I said. But in my mind, something cracked. That night, after Remy went to bed, I sat on the balcony, laptop open, stars overhead, and typed the words, Operations Management, Remote Jobs. My cursor blinked at me like it was daring me to hit search. And I did. It felt like cheating, like I was betraying some invisible code of loyalty. But I was tired of being the backbone no one saw. The ghost in the machine. I updated my resume. Created a fresh email alias. I applied to 5 companies that night. Quietly. Cautiously. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Remy. Over the next 2 weeks, I sent out 15 applications. I had 1 interview, 2 rejections, 1 ghosting, and then a callback from a company I didn't expect, Veilcore Consulting. They'd seen my resume and requested a video interview for a remote role with nearly 30% more pay. The recruiter, Isla, was warm and direct. She said my experience showed clear strategic initiative and above-grade ownership. It was the first time in years someone made me feel seen. I was floating, hopeful, like I was walking toward a door that had always been locked, except now I could hear someone unlocking it from the other side. And then 2 days later, Cassandra called me into her office. It was a Friday. I remember because I'd worn a soft gray sweater, thinking we might have a calm day. I even brought pastries for the team. But the moment I stepped in and saw HR was already seated, I knew something was wrong. Please close the door, Cassandra said, without looking at me. The HR rep, a woman named Darcy, I barely knew, cleared her throat and began reading from a pre-prepared statement. Effective immediately, we're terminating your employment with Braxwell and Company for breach of trust and policy violation. My ears rang. What? Cassandra leaned forward, face unreadable. We've become aware that you've been applying to competitors, using company bandwidth. I blinked. I've never applied on company time. Not once. We found an email thread on your work laptop, she said coolly. You saved a draft of your resume in your documents folder. That's when it hit me. I'd uploaded my resume from a flash drive to check formatting once. I didn't even send anything from work, but that didn't matter. Cassandra was already standing. We wish you the best. Please gather your things by end of day. IT has already locked your account. Just like that, 3 years collapsed into a neat little exit. I didn't cry on the elevator. I didn't scream. I walked to my desk, gathered my mug, a photo of Remy and me from his high school graduation, and the fake succulent I kept by my monitor. I waved to no one, because no one looked up. No one said a word. They knew. They'd seen it happen before. That's what companies like Braxwell do. They teach you silence. They teach you that your absence is less disruptive than your defiance. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I even turned the key. My hands shook. Not from fear. Not even from sadness. But from clarity. Because this wasn't just about a job. It was about every time I let someone undercut me because I didn't want to be difficult. Every time I smiled through exhaustion. Every time I said, maybe next quarter, and swallowed the lump in my throat. I kept telling myself, loyalty would pay off. But loyalty doesn't pay the rent. That weekend, I didn't job hunt. I didn't email Isla. I didn't even tell Remy what had happened. Instead, I opened the file folder I'd been building for 6 months. The one labeled Backearner Evidence. Inside were timestamped screenshots, Slack messages, emails where Cassandra had assigned weekend work to me but logged the project hours under her name, records of HR complaints from other women in our division, quietly dismissed, a spreadsheet showing quarterly bonuses that mysteriously never made it to lower admin staff but were marked distributed. I'd kept it not out of malice, but because something in me had known this day would come. I spent the next few days organizing it all, creating backups, compiling a narrative. And when I was ready, I sent a single, anonymous email to an investigative business reporter from the Ledger. Subject line: Toxic leadership at Braxwell and Co. Start here. Then I waited. And Cassandra Lorne. She had no idea what was coming.
I didn't think they'd respond.
The reporter, I assumed my email would disappear into a crowded inbox, buried under pitches from disgruntled interns and bored whistleblowers with nothing but rumors. But just 2 days later, I got a reply. The subject line was simple. We should talk, secure line only. Her name was Sienna Cho, senior investigative journalist for the Ledger's corporate malpractice division. I'd read one of her exposés last year. She took down a tech company for mass age discrimination and labor manipulation. She wasn't the kind of journalist who posted stories for clicks. She did it for justice. And justice was what I was after. Not just for me. For everyone who sat in that glass tower being told they were lucky just to be there.
We arranged a Zoom call that night.
I waited until Remy was out for class and locked myself in the bedroom, heart hammering like I was committing a federal crime. Sienna appeared on my screen in a gray hoodie, glasses low on her nose, surrounded by sticky notes and legal pads. Her first words? I've been watching Braxwell for a while. She didn't ask me to prove who I was. She already knew. Said my LinkedIn had quietly disappeared that same week, which aligned with other whispers she'd heard from former employees. She called me the missing link. I sent her everything. Every file. Every screenshot. Even the encrypted folders I didn't originally plan to include. The ones detailing Cassandra's biggest offense. I hadn't told anyone about that part. Not even myself, really. A year ago, Cassandra asked me to process a vendor contract for Perchpoint Strategies, a consulting firm supposedly hired to develop our diversity outreach plans. Except, when I did a little digging, I found Perchpoint didn't exist. Not legally. Its listed address traced back to a private residence in Vermont, and its EIN number matched a completely different LLC dissolved 4 years earlier. Cassandra had funneled nearly $200,000 into that vendor account across 5 quarters. The fake invoices were padded under outreach development and external audit compliance. I didn't want to believe what it meant, but the deeper I looked, the clearer it became. Cassandra was embezzling funds. I'd saved the documents. Not to use. Not yet. But because part of me wanted proof that I wasn't crazy. That the woman everyone idolized, the keynote speaker at 2 national HR conferences, was a liar. Now, that proof was in the hands of a journalist who knew exactly what to do with it. Over the next week, things started to shift. Sienna cross-verified everything with other former employees. One of them was a quiet man named Joel, who had been let go after raising accountability concerns about missing project funds. Another was Maris, who left after reporting harassment by a senior VP, only to have Cassandra bury the claim and sign her off with a glowing reference letter if she promised not to go to legal. And there were more.
10.
Then 15. All with stories. All with scars. It was like I had cracked open a dam, and behind it was a flood of stories no one had dared to speak aloud. But while Sienna built her case, I played the part of the quiet ex-employee. To Cassandra, I was gone. Disposable. Another cog discarded without hesitation. I used that invisibility. Veilcore Consulting, the company that had interviewed me before I was fired, reached out again. They hadn't heard about my departure yet, but I told them the truth in the interview. I was let go for exploring better opportunities. I expected them to end the call right there. But they didn't. They offered me the job. With better pay, remote flexibility, and full benefits. No games. No delays. It should have felt like vindication. A clean break. But I wasn't done yet. Because in the background, Sienna was preparing for her biggest move, a public report scheduled to publish the following Friday, complete with names, figures, and an audio recording she managed to source from a former assistant in Cassandra's inner circle. I was still debating whether to warn Cassandra. Not because I wanted to protect her, but because I wanted her to see me before it all collapsed. I wanted her to know who'd opened the door to the truth. But that decision was made for me. 2 days before the article was set to drop, I got a message on LinkedIn from an old coworker named Brielle. Hey, not sure if you heard, but Cassandra just got a promotion. New title, VP of Organizational Integrity. Isn't that wild? Wild wasn't the word. She had failed upward. Not only had she survived letting me go, she was rewarded for it. The rage that hit me was like swallowing glass. My chest burned with it. My hands clenched until my nails marked crescent moons in my palms. I opened my email and messaged Sienna one line. Go public. Don't hold back. The article hit the Ledger's website at 7:02 a.m. the next morning. By 7:08, the Braxwell subreddit exploded. By 7:15, Cassandra's name was trending on LinkedIn. By 9 a.m., Braxwell and company locked their Twitter account. And by noon, Cassandra had deleted hers entirely. The report was brutal. Not in tone, but in truth. It laid out a 3-year pattern of financial misdirection, personnel manipulation, and strategic silence across multiple HR claims. It included a full chart of every fake invoice, cross-matched with internal audit files. Even I hadn't seen it all laid out that clearly. The recording? That was the worst part. It was Cassandra's voice, cold, calculated. We keep them loyal by promising next quarter. That's all they need, hope. Hope's cheaper than money. I'd heard those words before. Now, the world had too. The fallout came fast. By Friday afternoon, Braxwell announced Cassandra was on administrative leave pending review. Internal compliance launched an audit. And the board issued a memo reaffirming their commitment to ethical leadership, which was corporate speak for we got caught. Now we pretend to care. That evening, I sat alone in my kitchen, the light above me flickering slightly, phone buzzing nonstop with messages from former coworkers, strangers, and even 2 reporters from other outlets. Sienna had protected my identity, but word spread fast. Somehow, people knew I was the one who cracked it open. Remy came home late, breathless, holding his phone. Ellie, he said, eyes wide. Is this you? I paused, then nodded. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he smiled. About time someone brought them down. But the real twist? That came a week later. I received an email from Braxwell's legal department. Polite, formal, but layered with undertones of desperation.
They wanted to speak with me.
Not to sue. Not to threaten, but to offer a settlement in exchange for a signed affidavit clarifying my role in the leak and agreeing not to assist further investigations. They were scared, and when powerful people get scared, they write checks. I forwarded the email to Sienna and a legal rep she connected me with. We didn't sign. Not yet, because what came next was bigger than a check. The SEC opened a preliminary inquiry into fraudulent invoicing and potential shareholder deception.
Cassandra?
She didn't just lose her job. She lost her entire professional reputation. The woman who once stood on stages and taught seminars on building trust in corporate ecosystems was now facing possible criminal charges. And me? I started my first day at Vailcore with a new title, a higher salary, and something far rarer than revenge.
Peace.
It's strange. People always assume that the most satisfying moment is when you watch the villain fall. But it wasn't. The real moment came 2 weeks later when Remy walked into my room holding a sealed envelope. Got this at the door for you, he said. It was a simple white envelope with no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper.
Typed.
Anonymous. I was going to quit this year. After everything she did to me. But your story gave me a reason to stay and fight. Thank you. That's when the tears finally came. Not from pain, but from knowing that someone somewhere felt less alone because I refused to stay silent. Some nights, I still hear Cassandra's voice in my head, sharp, dismissive, always on the edge of smug. Stay consistent. She wanted a workhorse, but what she got was a wildfire. And the thing about wildfires? They don't ask permission to burn. It's funny how silence can feel louder than noise. After the article dropped, the world around Cassandra Lorne seemed to vanish in slow motion. One sponsorship, one speaking gig, one carefully curated accolade at a time. But as much as the public story unraveled, there was a quieter one burning in the background.
Mine.
See, Cassandra didn't just lose her job. She lost control of the narrative, and that, to a woman like her, was unforgivable. I wasn't supposed to have a voice. I wasn't supposed to win. And that's when she made her final mistake. It was a Thursday morning when I got the email. It looked like spam at first, no subject line, no body text. Just a single attachment. Internal compliance notes _confidential docs. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. It was a memo, an internal review document from the company's risk committee. But it hadn't come from Sienna or anyone I knew. The header read, Source, Anonymous. Compiled via protected drop system. Inside the memo was a list of flagged ethics violations that Braxwell had failed to report to external auditors, dozens of them. Some were minor, but one stood out in red ink. Use of shell consulting firms for executive enrichment. Known parties include Cassandra, Lorne, and the name cut off midline. But I already knew who the second person was. Arthur Kane, our CFO. Arthur Kane was the kind of man who wore $4,000 suits and talked about brand narratives over company-wide layoffs. I'd met him only once. He passed by my desk and asked me to print a 100-page deck 10 minutes before an executive meeting. Never said thank you. Just stared down his nose like I owed him for breathing in the same air. He was the one who signed off on Cassandra's expense requests. On paper, he looked clean. But this memo proved he wasn't just aware, he was involved. And if Cassandra went down, she wouldn't go alone. I forwarded the memo to Sienna. Within minutes, she called me. Eloan, she said, breathless. I don't know where this came from, but this is the match. You ready to light it? I paused. Because for a second, I wasn't sure. I had already burned Cassandra's career to the ground. Was I ready to take down everyone? But then I remembered something. During my third year at Braxwell, after my second denied raise, I caught Arthur smiling at Cassandra in the break room. She was crying over budget limits and claiming we couldn't hire a second admin even though I was pulling triple shifts. He just smiled and said, Don't worry. They're replaceable. All of them. That sentence never left me. So I looked Sienna dead in the eye through my webcam. Dropped the match. What followed was chaos. Not the kind you see on the news. The quieter kind. The kind with NDAs and boardroom panic. 3 things happened in 72 hours. 1. Arthur Kane stepped away from his position to spend time with family. 2. The company's internal investigation was reopened, this time with federal oversight. 3. Sienna's second article went viral and fast. Titled The Salary Trap, How Corporations Weaponize Hope, it used Braxwell as the centerpiece, but zoomed out into the broader culture of labor exploitation. My story had become a case study for a national conversation. But with the spotlight came risk. Sunday night, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Remy wasn't home. I peeked through the peephole. A man in a blazer.
Tall. Dark gray tie.
Clipboard in hand. I opened the door an inch. Can I help you? He nodded, not unkindly. Ms. Ray? I'm here on behalf of Braxwell's Legal Affairs Unit. You've been requested to attend a formal deposition regarding your statements to the press. I blinked. I never gave a statement. Sienna protected my name. He gave a faint smile. The kind that makes your skin crawl. Yes, but the board has reason to believe you shared proprietary data. They're exercising their rights to clarify the record. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced my apartment, rereading every message, every email, every file I'd sent. Had I misstepped? Had I exposed myself too soon? I texted Sienna. They know. She replied, Don't worry. This is their fear talking. It means you hit the nerve. The deposition was scheduled 2 days later in a high-rise building downtown. I wore my best blazer, the one I used to wear at Braxwell before they made me feel invisible in it. Cassandra wasn't there, but Arthur Kane was. He sat across from me in a boardroom lined with cold water bottles and legal pads, his gaze bored, detached. Their lawyer asked questions. Gentle at first. Did you access files beyond your clearance level? Were you in contact with outside press while still employed? Did you fabricate any of the documents in the report? Each time, I answered calmly, truthfully, powerfully. Because here's the thing about telling the truth. You don't have to remember it. You just have to live it. After an hour, their tone changed. Their lawyer leaned in. Ms. Ray, do you understand the potential consequences of defamation, both for yourself and the parties named? And I smiled. I do. Do you understand the consequences of whistleblower retaliation? Because I have counsel, and you have a recorder running. There was silence. Arthur shifted in his chair. They dismissed me shortly after. But it wasn't over. That night, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Clarabelle Young. She was Cassandra's former executive assistant, left 2 years ago after a mysterious family emergency. Turned out the emergency was a nervous breakdown after being forced to alter audit records under Arthur's direction. She told me she'd been following the articles, that she'd been too scared to come forward before. But you made it feel possible. If you're still fighting, I want in. By week's end, Clarabelle submitted a full affidavit to the Department of Labor, and with it came encrypted copies of every altered file she had secretly saved on a flash drive the day she quit. It was the final nail in the coffin. In the third and final report Sienna published, she included Clarabelle's files, the redacted deposition transcripts, and testimony from 3 more whistleblowers who came forward after seeing my story. The headline? Burn the Ladder: How One Woman Took Down a $40 million HR Empire from the Inside. And just like that, Cassandra and Arthur became case studies in systemic rot. But the most unexpected twist? A week later, I got an email from a man named Julian Hartwell, founder of a nonprofit startup called Rebalance. They help companies rebuild their hiring practices, train ethical HR departments, and build equity-focused cultures. He had read the article and wanted to offer me something I never saw coming: a position as Director of Integrity Initiatives, helping to train the very people who once tried to silence me. I asked him why he reached out. His answer? You proved that resilience isn't just survival. It's transformation. That's the kind of story we want to build a future on. I said yes, not because I needed a new job, but because I finally knew what I was fighting for. And I wasn't done. 2 months later, I stood on a stage for the first time in my life. A small conference in Seattle. Nothing fancy. Maybe 50 people in folding chairs. But to me, it felt like a stadium. I told my story, not the one they printed, the one with all the quiet heartbreak in between, the small humiliations, the empty promises, the years of thinking I just had to wait my turn. And I ended with this: you don't owe your loyalty to companies that only remember your name when you mess up. You owe it to yourself, to your future. And when someone tells you to stay consistent, ask them why they're afraid of change. The crowd stood, applauded, and for once, I didn't feel like a survivor. I felt like a builder. 6 months later, Cassandra Loren was officially indicted on corporate fraud and embezzlement charges. Her statement to the press was predictably vague. Mistakes were made. I take responsibility. I hope to rebuild trust. But I didn't care anymore, because I had already rebuilt what she tried to take from me: my voice. Last week, I got a message from a young woman who just started her first admin job. She said she read the articles, followed my story, and cried at her desk because it made her feel seen. I thought I was the only one who felt invisible, she wrote. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about making sure no one else had to feel like I did. Small. Replaceable.
Silent.
If you're listening to this and you've ever been told to just be grateful, if you've ever had your ambition mistaken for arrogance, your silence mistaken for weakness, then hear this. You are not too much. They were simply too small to see you. Would you have burned it all down or walked away in silence? Tell me in the comments below. Because sometimes the best revenge is no longer needing one.